Greetings everyone, Stizzle466 here, and today I'd like to give you my summary of the Wild Open 2019 from the perspective of the Americas server. For those who aren't familiar with how the Wild Open works, this is the third time that Blizzard has hosted a Wild event, and similar to the first Wild Open, invitations were based on your ladder finishes. So for this Open, you had to be in the top 100 legend at the end of the month on either the Americas, Europe, or Asia Pacific server, depending on where you're located, in order to be invited to the Wild Open qualifiers for your region. In these qualifiers, the top 100 players compete, and the top 2 are invited to participate in the 2019 Wild Open Finals. And these are the big events that are on the Play Hearthstone channel, where some pretty hefty cash prizes are up, as well as just the fame of being there on the big screen for everyone on Twitch to see. So this is a really exciting time for Wild. Everyone was going crazy trying to qualify for the event. A lot of people in Standard were coming in with lots of really interesting decks. And so it was really fun those last few days, just really grinding, cheering on my friends and my teammates just to try and qualify for this event. For myself, I was top 100 for most of the month. I bombed out in the last 2 days, but some of my teammates did qualify, specifically Concern Mom and Danny Donuts. And so this is just a snapshot of the top end of some of the top 100 players, but definitely lots of people that I look up to or are friends with in the Wild community, such as Reno Jackson, Clark, Jonarar, Gangplank, Memnarch, Spiral, and many more that aren't on this list. Just really happy to see them qualify for the event. So at this point, I had taken on a different role from the trying to qualify role to the trying to help my friends role to do well in the event. So then the big day comes where the Wild Open qualifiers begin, and it initially consisted of 7 rounds of Swiss. Now, interestingly, on the Americas server, even though 100 people qualified, only 86 actually attended. And this is something I wasn't too happy with how Blizzard approached things. Basically, if someone couldn't attend, they didn't replace them with the next person on the ladder. They just dropped them off the list of 100. But it's just a small little gripe, and but the second little gripe is I was really excited about this, this qualifiers event. It wasn't streamed. And so there were some select streamers who stream their games, Jonarar for example, Control, or Dragon. But basically for me, it was basically just sitting there refreshing a Battlefy page. Needless to say, it was still a lot of fun, and it was fun to following along. So as you can see here, this is the first of the 7 rounds of Swiss. Jonarar was very fortunate to get a bye, and we kind of poked fun of him a little bit. Danny Donuts won his first round 2-0. We saw Nicolina, who's also known as Moon, go 2-1 against Mildemir. We saw Control vs Raffles. That was a very high celebrity match where Control went 2-0 against Raffle. Or Dragon went 1-2, losing out on the first round. It's a Trap or of Moncala, which is another friend of mine, unfortunately didn't do too well in the first round. Clark went 2-0, and then Concern Mom against Sphinx Manatee. Unfortunately, Concern Mom only got 1 win for that best of 3. However, it's only the first round, you don't get discouraged. Round 2 comes along. As we can see, 6 players did drop out. And so at this point we have a significantly less number of, a smaller pool of people, but still pretty decent. And so we can see that unfortunately, because Raffle didn't win this round either, it made sense for him to drop out, which was unfortunate. He put a lot of work into his event. He also had a really fun lineup, having Barnes in all 3 of his lists, which was fun to see. Banana Ramek went 2-1 against Clark, which was an interesting one. Dr. Chikaniki went 2-0, and he's one of the big Standard names that was really making a splash in this Wild event. Sphinx Manatee beat Control 2-1. Or Dragon won in the second round as opposed to the first one, so he had a bit of a better chance. X-Crouton beat his opponent who dropped out. Nicolino unfortunately went 0-2. Jurnarau beats Gangplank 2-1, and Gangplank was actually someone I was specking up to the last second to qualify for this event, so I watched his last couple games to qualify. Danny Donuts unfortunately lost round 2. Memnak went 2-0. Concern Mom unfortunately loses 0-2 to Ben from work. At this point, there was no point for Concern Mom to continue in the qualifiers. So then round 3 comes along. As we can see, we have quite a few less people. We're now down to 78 players. Memnak again at 2-0s his match. Ben from work unfortunately doesn't win and drops out. Bananaramic goes 2-0. Doesn't win his round 3. With Danny Donuts goes 2-1, doesn't win his third round, so that's now 1 win and 2 losses for Danny Donuts, but he still has a chance on tiebreakers to qualify. Bloodyface matches up against Control, goes 2-0. Spiral drops out, losing round 3. And so just lots of interesting matchups. A Crouton going 2-1. Again, you can see at this point the tension's getting a bit more intense. A lot more people are dropping out. So now we come to round 4 of 7. We're now down to 64 players. We can see that Dr. Janinki beats Nicolina 2-0. Bananaramic gets a 2-1. Ordragon gets a 2-0. Jurnarau gets a 2-0. So a lot of the big wild names are, really fighting to make it through. Control unfortunately drops out here, losing his round for round 4. And then we move on to round 5. So now it's getting really slim. We're down to 54 players. Bananaramic again wins the round 2-1. I believe this is Memnak's first loss at 1-2. Jurnarau wins 2-1. Dr. Jikaninki wins 2-0. We can see that Danny Donuts drops out here after his loss. And Nicolina is 2-1, so she's still in for a shot. And then round 6 comes along, the second last round, and at this point a lot of people have dropped. We're down to 44 players. And so Nicolina goes 2-0 to win another round. So Nicolina is a very popular and well-liked Twitch streamer, so people are really cheering her along. Jurnarau goes 2-1. Memnak loses another round, so now Memnak has lost 2 rounds, unfortunately. Bananaramic gets queued up against Dr. Jikaninki, loses to him. And then we move on to the final round, round 7. So at this point, we've only got 34 players remaining. This is the round that determines the top 8 to go through to the next phase of the open qualifiers. So Memnak's up against Bananaramic. Bananaramic takes the win. This gives Bananaramic a shot for top 8 on qualifiers. We also see Dr. Jikaninki go 2-0 against Jurnarau. And then if we look at the results after calculating the tiebreakers, we can see that the 8 players to qualify are Jurnarau, Sargento SC, Dr. Jikaninki, Level 2001, Sphinx Manatee, Avery, I Am Techo, and Tincho. And so kind of the sad thing about this is kind of when like the kind of the depression kicked in for some people. Only one well-known wild player qualified for the top 8. The other 7 players there are all standard players. So this is a little bit disheartening to see. We were all really hoping some of the really hard-working wild players would make it through. And maybe this is where you talk about maybe best of 3s aren't the best approach to the format. They're very high-rolly. But, Blizzard's been doing best of 3s 2 years in a row now. Hopefully we can go to a different mode, maybe specialist mode for next year. It's hard to say. So it's been a big day for all these players, but the day continues on, and we then go on to the top 8 to see who qualifies for the Open. I believe this was on the second day, so it wasn't the same day, it was the following day they had to play their top 8. And so Junerar unfortunately got knocked out in the first round, going 1-2 against Tincho. Sphinx Manatee makes it through to round 2, going 2-1 against level 9001. I'm Teko and Dr. Jikaninki make it through to round 2. During round 2, Sphinx Manatee goes 2-1 against Tincho. Dr. Jikaninki goes 2-0 against I'm Teko. The round of 3 doesn't have to be played because it doesn't matter who wins. The main thing is those 2 players, Sphinx Manatee, Dr. Jikaninki on the America server, have qualified for the Wild Open 2019. And even if they come 8th, they're guaranteed a cash prize. So just to look at the lineups for the top 2 America's players. If we look at Sphinx Manatee's lineup, this is one of the most unwildish lineups I've seen in quite a while. If we look at his cube lock, the cube lock is pretty standard. When I say standard, I mean normal. There's an Azoth the Corruptor in there, which is kind of questionable, but otherwise it's a pretty normal list. And then you see his Paladin list, and this Paladin list doesn't make a whole load of sense. This is basically just a very traditional aggro paladin with nothing particularly special in it. It's not running the Thakal Giants package. It's not running eggs. It's just ordinary. Nothing particularly interesting. And then there's this rogue list. And this is the list that really threw me off. So there are some cards that you never see in Wild Odd Rogue. First of all is Archerist Veteran. Second is Wolf Rider. Wolf Rider you don't even see in Standard Odd Rogue. Typically in Wild, Myra's Unstable Element isn't that good. Something really shocking here is there are also some cards that are noticeably absent. Specifically Dark Iron Skulker, which is a staple in Wild. It's just a powerhouse of a card, one of the cards that make Odd Road work. So this is a very weird deck, but you know, did Sphinx Manatee build a good lineup? Is he better than all the Wild players? Or did the best of 3 format go in his favor? That was the big question people had going into the Wild Open 2019 to see his performance. Looking at Dr. Jikaninki's lineup, his lineup was much more well-rounded, and you could tell that he had consulted with Wild pros, put the work in on ladder to bring a really strong lineup. I really respect this lineup. It's a full aggro lineup. He's running the odd paladin, nothing particularly spicy except for that Witch's Cauldron, which I really respect. He's running 1 owl, so it looks like instead of running 2 owls, he's running an owl and a Witch's Cauldron. I also really like the use of only 1 Divine Favor, and I find 2 is kind of overkill. I sometimes myself also cut a Fungalmancer, but overall, very solid Odd Paladin list. He also brought an even Shaman list. The interesting tech here is the Acidic Swamp Ooze and the 2 Galactic Crawlers. This is to deal with all the Rogue. Kingsbane Rogue was a very popular list to bring to the Wild Open qualifiers. He's also running a little bit of greed, choosing to run Fire Elemental, Ragnaros the Fire Lord, and the Lich King. So very solid even Shaman deck, well thought out, teched for the tournament meta. And finally we have Alaneth or Secret Mage. So this is a deck that isn't particularly good on ladder, but it's quite good in a tournament setting, especially if you want to take advantage of Warlocks. So if we have a look at this specific list, he's running the 2 Primordial Glyphs. A lot of people kind of frown upon this because you have a much bigger pool, which means you have a chance of getting some really bad cards. On the other hand, there are also some really good cards, just a bigger variance of choices. He's got some tech in to deal with Big Priest, the Potion of Polymorph. But again, going back to the glyphs, typically you only want to have the Primordial Glyphs in your Tempo Mage list if you're also running Flame Wakers, which is not the case here. So perhaps taking out one of those Master Contenders and another card. I don't know, maybe he's only running one Forgotten Torch, maybe even taking out the Forgotten Torch. It's hard to say, but the list worked for him, and it was he definitely worked really hard to qualify for the Wild Open 2019. So then came the big day. This was the event that was hosted on the Play Hearthstone channel, so all 8 of these matches were cast by Cora, Strife Pro, and Dane. The casters did an excellent work. I enjoyed watching round 1. I was, obviously a bit of bias, but I was cheering for the Americas players. So I was also really curious to see, does Sphinx Manatee's lineup really hold up? He put up a fight, but he ended up losing out on round 1, 3-2 to a Korean player. Dr. Jikaninki, he made it through to round 2, 3-1ing his European opponent Jawler. But then unfortunately he went 1-3 in round 2, not qualifying for the grand final. Now, one little kind of complaint I had while watching this open is it was very kind of like, here's the game, now a break. Here's the game, now a break. There wasn't any sort of like little fun pieces thrown in there. To my knowledge, I didn't see anything about player bio information or like spot the lethals, little games for chat to play, just to have a bit of fun to hype things up. It was just very kind of, it kind of felt like Blizzard was saying, well, we got to do a wild tournament, so here you go. And what was really disappointing, I found, was the round 3, the grand final. Basically, the Chinese opponent brought a control lineup, which also had an odd paladin in it, and the Korean player brought a full aggro lineup, which included aggro druid. And the Chinese player's lineup was just designed to just dump all over aggro. The Korean opponent never had a chance, and it was just the most depressing grand final I've seen in quite a, and I've watched quite a few Hearthstone tournaments, so it was very kind of a lackluster end to the whole thing. But all in all, I'm happy it happened. I hope Blizzard have some more wild tournaments besides just an annual Wild Open. Let me know what you thought about the Wild Open. What did you enjoy? What do you think could have been improved on? What was your highlight of the whole time? Whether it was part of the Wild Open 2019 or part of the qualifiers or just your own experience of trying to qualify yourself. Thanks for your time. If you want to support this channel, you can click that subscribe button below. I also stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/slizzle466, and I tweet various Hearthstone related items at twitter.com/slizzle466. So until next time, I hope to see you again.